It was late in the evening when Cristiano Ronaldo's phone rang, the kind of hour when the world seemed to slow down, the bustling energy of the day fading into a quiet hum. He was lounging in his mansion, a comfortable space filled with soft lights and the distant hum of the city far below. Ronaldo had just finished a long day of training, stretching his muscles, getting his body ready for the next game. With a glass of water beside him and the weight of his success resting gently on his shoulders, he felt a rare moment of peace. The phone rang once, twice, a third time. It was an unknown number. Without much thought, he picked it up. "Hello," he answered, his voice clear and calm. A frail, cracked voice responded, barely audible over the line. "Hello? Is this Cristiano?" Ronaldo frowned. "Yes, this is Cristiano Ronaldo. Who's calling?" There was a long pause, and for a moment, he thought the line had cut out. But then the voice spoke again, slower this time, as if trying to muster the strength to get the words out. "I'm sorry to bother you, young man, but I don't know who else to turn to." "I need help," the woman said. Her voice trembled, a combination of frailty and desperation. "My name is Margaret. I live alone, and I've fallen. I can't get up. My legs, they just don't work like they used to. I'm so sorry to call you. I don't know why I did. I just thought you might be able to help." Ronaldo felt a strange pang in his chest. He had gotten used to being recognized everywhere he went, from the streets of Lisbon to the football pitches of Madrid, but this was different. This wasn't a fan asking for an autograph or a picture. This was a woman, isolated and in need. And she had called him, of all people, by mistake. He quickly gathered his thoughts. "Margaret, where are you? Can you tell me your address? I'll send someone over right now." But there was a hesitation on the other end of the line. I don't have anyone nearby. I didn't want to bother anyone. It's just that I've been alone for so long. My children live far away, and I'm too far from my neighbors to ask for help. I didn't want to call the hospital. I didn't want to burden anyone." Her voice wavered again, and it became clear that the loneliness of her life was as painful as her physical injury. Ronaldo didn't know what to say at first. He could feel the weight of her words pressing against him, the sense of helplessness that was now filling the room. He wasn't a doctor, he wasn't trained to handle emergencies. But as he sat there, holding the phone, he realized something. He could help. Not with a doctor's expertise, but with the simplest, most human thing, his presence. The footballer had been a global superstar for years, admired by millions for his athleticism, his drive, and his success. But there was another side to him that most people didn't see. The quiet moments, when he would sit alone and reflect on his career, his family, and the world around him. And tonight, that side of him stirred. "Margaret, I'm coming to help you. Don't worry. I'm on my way," he said, his voice resolute. He knew this was unexpected, but something about her vulnerability moved him. He couldn't ignore it, and he wasn't going to dismiss it as an inconvenient call. On the other end of the line, there was a stunned silence before Margaret spoke again, this time with more clarity. You will come?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes," Ronaldo confirmed. "I'll be there soon. Just stay where you are, okay?" After a few more reassuring words, he ended the call. For a brief moment, he sat still, staring at the phone in his hand. He was used to being in control of his life on the field, in front of cameras, surrounded by a team of professionals. But this was different. He stood up, heading toward the closet to change. There was no entourage, no bodyguard. Just him, and his decision to act in a way that most people would never expect from a global icon. While the world saw him as a larger-than-life athlete, at that moment, he was just a man, someone with the ability to make a difference in someone else's life. Margaret's house was on the outskirts of Lisbon, a small two-story home nestled in a quiet neighborhood that looked much like any other. The street was lined with modest homes, their windows dark, the sound of crickets filling the air. It was the kind of place where people knew each other by name, but distance had a way of creeping into lives, and now, it seemed that even that sense of connection had faded for Margaret. Ronaldo drove alone in his car, the city lights flickering as he made his way to the elderly woman's house. He had arranged for someone to check on his next training session, but the need to help was far more pressing. He hadn't told anyone about his plan. He didn't feel the need to. There was no one to impress, no cameras to pose for. In that moment, it was just him and the decision he had made. As he pulled up to the house, he saw the dim light coming from the window. He parked his car and walked up to the front door, his footsteps heavy on the gravel path. He knocked once, and there was a shuffling sound from inside before the door slowly creaked open. Margaret stood before him, her frail figure barely reaching the top of his chest. Her face was lined with age, her hair thin and white, but her eyes were clear, a sharpness that seemed to defy the years. She gazed up at him, her hands clutching the doorframe for support. "You came," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. Ronaldo smiled gently. "Of course, I came. You said you needed help, and I'm here." Without another word, he stepped inside, his presence filling the small living room. There were no signs of luxury here, no hint of the wealth he had earned through his years of success. The room was simple, filled with old furniture and faded photographs of a life long lived. Margaret gestured toward the couch, and Ronaldo sat beside her, his focus entirely on her. "How can I help?" he asked, the sincerity in his voice unmistakable. Margaret's eyes welled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "I've been alone for so long, Cristiano. I just didn't know who to call. I thought maybe you could help me get to the doctor. But I know you must be so busy." Ronaldo shook his head. "I'm not too busy. You're more important than anything else right now." He had already made up his mind. He wasn't leaving until Margaret felt safe and cared for. No one had come for her, not for a long time. She needed someone to break the silence of her isolation, and he was going to be that person. In that quiet, dimly lit room, Ronaldo did what he had done countless times on the football field. He showed up. He wasn't there for a story or a photo opportunity. He was there for Margaret. And in that moment, no one would have known just how much humanity was in the man who had everything the world could offer. As the evening wore on, Ronaldo remained at Margaret's side. The house, which had once felt so empty and cold, now seemed filled with a warmth that had been absent for years. Margaret, despite her frailty, found herself feeling a kind of peace that she hadn't known in a long time. Here was this towering figure, someone she had only seen in magazines or on television, sitting beside her, his presence as grounding as the earth beneath her feet. Margaret had tried to thank him countless times, her gratitude spilling out in quiet, halting words. But Ronaldo, in his typical manner, didn't want praise or recognition. He simply listened to her stories of her family, her youth, and her struggles. He learned of the long years she had spent isolated from the world, watching as her friends and family grew older, their lives drifting further from hers. "You know," she said softly, after a long pause, "my husband used to say that we never really grow old as long as we have someone to share it with. But it's hard, when everyone leaves." Ronaldo nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had everything, the fame, the fortune, the family, but there was still a deep, quiet loneliness in the world. Even for him. Yet tonight, in this small house, he found a sense of fulfillment that no trophy or endorsement could ever provide. It wasn't about the game. It wasn't about the accolades. It was about being human, about the connections that transcended wealth and fame. "I'm here now," Ronaldo replied, his voice soft yet firm. "And I'll help however I can." Margaret smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with tears. She had known for a while that her strength was waning, but seeing the genuine compassion in Ronaldo's eyes gave her a sense of comfort. She hadn't felt truly cared for in so long, and it was a balm to her soul to be in the presence of someone who wanted nothing in return. Ronaldo spent the next few hours with her, helping her get comfortable, ensuring she had everything she needed. He moved with the careful precision of someone used to being attentive to detail, whether it was for a game or, as in this case, for an elderly woman in need. He assisted her with medication, prepared a cup of tea, and even set up her favorite television program. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was real, and in those moments, he could feel the difference he was making. By the time the night came to a close, Margaret was more relaxed, no longer struggling to hide the loneliness that had weighed on her for so long. She had someone to talk to, someone who cared, and it wasn't just a fleeting interaction. It was genuine. Ronaldo hadn't come to fix everything, but he had brought something much more valuable, the gift of presence. The next morning, Ronaldo was back at his mansion, the weight of the day's activities ahead of him pressing down. His training session was early, followed by meetings, endorsements, and media obligations. He was used to the constant pressure, the never-ending list of things to do. But as he prepared for his day, his mind wandered back to Margaret. He hadn't been able to shake the image of her small house, the quiet that enveloped her, and the deep gratitude in her eyes when he had helped her the night before. He hadn't told anyone about what had happened. He didn't need to. It wasn't something that required an audience. There were no cameras, no applause. Just the quiet act of one person reaching out to another in a moment of need. But the more Ronaldo thought about it, the more he realized that this was the kind of thing the world needed to see. As the day wore on and he moved through the motions of his daily routine, Ronaldo felt the weight of the world's expectations less heavily. He was more than just a footballer. He was someone who could make a difference. Not by scoring goals or making headlines, but by simply being there when it mattered. Later that week, as he reflected on his encounter with Margaret, Ronaldo decided to do something. He returned to her house, this time bringing with him a small team. The team wasn't there to take over or intervene in any significant way, they were there to help Margaret in ways that went beyond just one night's visit. They set up transportation for her medical appointments, arranged for regular check-ins with her neighbors, and even made sure she had access to a caretaker for the days she needed additional support. Ronaldo didn't want Margaret to feel alone again, and this time, he had the resources to make sure she wouldn't be. Months passed, and Ronaldo never spoke of the incident again. To him, it was just something he did, a simple act of kindness. But for Margaret, it had become a defining moment in her life. She often spoke of him to her few remaining friends, describing the time when the famous footballer had come to her aid without fanfare or expectation. Her friends were astonished by the story, not just because of who he was, but because of the humility with which he had acted. He didn't come to pose for pictures or to tell anyone about it, Margaret would say. He just came, and that's all I needed. In an era where athletes and celebrities were often reduced to their public personas, Ronaldo had shown the world that there was more to him than just his achievements on the field. There was a quiet strength in the way he lived his life, one that wasn't defined by goals or trophies, but by his actions when no one was looking. He was a role model, not because of his skill with a ball at his feet, but because of his ability to reach out, to listen, and to offer a helping hand when it mattered most. And that, perhaps, was the greatest thing Ronaldo would ever accomplish, showing the world that true greatness isn't about being the best at something, it's about being the best person you can be when no one is watching. In those small, quiet moments of humanity, Ronaldo's legacy was built not in stadiums or on billboards, but in the hearts of those who truly saw him. Thank you very much, see you in the next video.